Welcome, good thinkers, to Good Thinking Live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here, right here on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube Live. So for those of you good thinkers, you know the drill. Those of you new, definitely share who you are and where you're from. Sometimes you will see the scrolls of other people on LinkedIn Live, and you won't see the scrolls unless you're on YouTube Lives, but I can see you all, and I'm going to love your comments because this is going to be a very, very interactive show. Those of you who know Good Thinking Live, you know that this is just a little bit of time each week that we spend devoting some time, taking away from all the time we spend on being told what to think so that we can focus our attention on improving how we think. So let me know who you are and where you're from in the comments, and a lot of participation in store. All right, I'll get started because we're going to borrow from history's great thinkers, and then we're going to dissect and debate and discuss whether we agree or disagree with 11 of history's great thinkers and their famous quotes. So Jennifer Felberg here and excited. Yay! I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Jennifer Felberg. Who else is here? Where are you from? Let me know. All right, we'll get started. This example, this list of precepts is called Prospero's Precepts, and I'll tell you why. There's this big debate, and it's been going on for centuries, about whether William Shakespeare actually wrote all the plays by himself, or even whether he even wrote some of the plays at all, or whether these could be attributed to other authors. So this is like the big debate in William Shakespeare aficionados that they kind of debate. And so this guy, this Stanford astrophysicist, wrote a book called also known as Shakespeare. So AKA Shakespeare, a scientific approach to authorship. So he used these 11 great thinkers from history and their quotes to assess and deal with the doubt as to whether Shakespeare wrote what he, by himself, or wrote all these plays. Okay, so I'll give you that's some of the background. Now we're going to say hi. Stephen is here from Matt Groening's birthplace. Who of you know Matt Groening? Simpsons? The Simpsons. All right, welcome. And we have Bharath from India. I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Actually, it'll be interesting if you know. I'm glad you're here from India. Welcome, welcome, Bharath. All right. So the reason that these precepts are called Prospero's precepts, just to give you a little framework because it's kind of fun, is that Prospero is a character in Bill Shakespeare's last play, The Tempest. And in that, Prospero's character, prior to the play starting, the backstory is that he was the Duke of Milan and he was overthrown by his brother and set adrift in a boat with his baby daughter, Miranda, Prospero. And during the 15 years before the play starts, he had studied magic. So this is kind of, and a lot of people read into, because this is Shakespeare's last play, a lot of people read into whether he was like revealing secrets about whether he really wrote these plays or not. So this guy, this Stanford astrophysicist who wrote this book, Peter Surak, wrote this book using these 11 great thinkers and their quotes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 11 quotes and we're going to see if we agree or disagree. So we're going to tease apart these quotes, and they're really fun. All right, welcome. We have got Ashutosh from Bangladesh. Welcome. I'm horrible at pronouncing names. I hope I'm close. You can say, oh, that was a horrible botched job, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. Good thinkers from all around the world. All right, so we're going to get started with these 11 rules, because this is like a checklist, kind of a credos that provide an analytical tool so that you can know. They might serve as a guideline for critical thinking when you're dealing with doubt, or how you know whether something is true. A key critical thinking question: how do we know what to believe, or that allows us to decide what to do? Key sweet spot for critical thinking. So we're going to give you the background on each person that provided the quote. Then we're going to take the quote and see if you agree or disagree. Ready? And feedback and comments. Good chickens, rubber chickens are in the house ready for your comments. And we have got, welcome, Ravinda from Pune, India. Welcome, welcome to Good Thinking. I am so glad all of you are here. Let me know who you are and where you're from, and we will get started. All right. Okay, so the first great thinker that we're going to use, one of the first quote, comes from Stephen Henry Schneider. And the cool thing about these 11 great thinkers is they're from all different kinds of areas and industries. Like, this is key mental agility, where you're taking insights from different industries and different art, areas of art and literature and science. And so it'll bring a lot of kind of different perspectives. So this guy, Stephen Henry Schneider, was 1945 to 1910. He was a professor of environmental biology and global change at Stanford University, and he was a co-director at the Center for Environmental Science and Policy. He actually advised and was on White House staff for both Bush administrations, Richard Nixon, and Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan, and Barack Obama. So he kind of spanned the political spectrum, but his approach was from a climate perspective. All right, so here is his quote, and you're going to let us know. Good thinkers, weigh in. Ready? Drum roll, please. His quote is, "All beliefs in whatever realm are theories at some level." All beliefs at whatever realm are theories in some level. Marcelo, welcome from Italy. Yay, welcome. All right, so what do you think? Is this true? Well, let's start with a couple definitions so we make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So if you think about a theory, and we know what a theory is in theory, but just to kind of hone in on the definition, think of a theory as an explanation for why certain laws or facts exist. And those explanations can then be tested for accuracy. So that's a theory. And belief is a statement that's not scientifically provable in the same way as facts, laws, hypotheses, and theories. All right, so Karen says, agree with all beliefs in whatever realm are theories at some level. Rubber chickens, at some level, they should be tested, but at what point do you then take a belief and turn it into a theory that you can test? And if you hold that belief strongly, are you willing to turn it into a theory? Jennifer Fehlberg says, true. So we've got 2 for yes, Stephen Henry Schneider's quote. All right, keep them coming, keep them coming. Let us know what you think. All right, next one. And some of them will kind of tease apart more than others. All right, the next one comes from Dandamus. So this is, now we're switching from the United States back to ancient India, because Dandamus was an Indian philosopher, a Swami, and the story goes that Alexander the Great, when he was going through his conquering this area, came across Dandamus, who was a gymnosophist. Am I pronouncing that correctly? A gymnosophist. That is the aesthetic and contemplated religion or sect that wore very little clothing and spent a lot of time, in contemplation. So this is his quote. And we've got, hi, Salwa from Egypt. These are all the places that I want to go visit. You good thinkers from around the world, at some point when things open up with COVID, we're gonna have to all get together in a physical way. Someday. All right. So ready for Dandamus's quote. Let me know what you think. This is quote number 2. Do not condemn the judgment of another because it differs from your own. You may both be wrong. Do not condemn the judgment of another because it differs from your own, because you may both be wrong. So have you ever been in an argument where, you are arguing one side and the other person's arguing another, and later you realize you're both wrong? Because just because someone else is wrong doesn't make you right? Or just because someone else is right, it doesn't mean you're wrong. Do you agree or disagree? I'm going to go in wholeheartedly. I'm going to say, I agree. What do you think? Do you agree with Dandamus? Karen says, agree. I agree too. Victoria says often. Yeah, good. A little nuance there. Victoria says often. Welcome. And you may both be wrong. Now, it doesn't say you are always both wrong. So that leaves open the possibility. That's why I'm going to go in saying, I agree with this quote. All right. What about you? Anyone else want to weigh in on Dandamus's quote? Next is Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon is one of the critical thinking gurus, or kind of because he's the father of the scientific revolution. He has been called the father of empiricism. He argued for the possibility of scientific knowledge based only upon inductive reasoning and a careful observation of events in nature. So in the critical thinking realm, you kind of have to give a little hat tip to Francis. Actually, he's being featured in my next critical thinking course that's coming out on LinkedIn Learning later this year. So look out for Francis. All right. Life is full of good and bad choices. Absolutely, Omar. And Baroth says true. So we're going to see, what do we think about the following thing? We have got Francis Bacon's quote coming up. Ready? Read. So this is about reading. We're being told something, what to do. So we'll see if we like that. Read not to contradict and confute or refute, So read not to contradict and refute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. So if you take that to mean, like, right now, do you read a book so that you can talk about it with your friends, or one up your friends or your enemies and understanding things, or be able to brag that you know this or that? Or do you read in order to weigh and consider? And should you only ever be able to read to be able to weigh and consider? What do you think? Agree. Karen Gordon Brown says, agree. Don't look for confirmation. And that's really important, because confirmation bias is so tempting, but you can look for disconfirmation, and then you're able to move forward with an understanding. And this gets to John Stuart Mill. He who knows only his side of the case knows little of that. The other thing is, if you're reading from someone else's point of view, and then you're espousing what you learn, are you really a thought leader? What original thoughts are you bringing? Well, first you have to read to weigh and consider before you can even think about getting into debates or speaking on behalf of certain topics. Because if you just read, okay, this is what I need to think, and then you go out pounding and pounding and pounding with what to think, telling other people what to think, then there's no way to fight against prevailing beliefs. Okay. Aha. It's Swami Vivekananda, if I am not wrong and true. Actually, I'm glad you said that, Ravindra, because there's a lot of different names and attributions. I mean, anytime you go back that far in history, the names and the stories can kind of change. Even what happened yesterday, let alone hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. So yes, you're probably right. I know that there was another name for Dandamus, which was Mandanes. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, and it could be the other Swami you mentioned too. Okay, so Bharath says agree. So you agree that the point of reading should be to weigh and consider. So I'm going to say maybe the initial point to weigh and consider, so that you can develop your own original thoughts that allow you not to just jump in and espouse prevailing beliefs. And that goes for our own too. A lot of times when we see these things, we say, yeah, that's what the other people should do. But we don't think about, like, okay, yeah, that's what we should do too, because maybe the prevailing belief is so ingrained in our minds that we think that this will never change. But, at one point we wore, some of us, how many of you remember in the 90s, acid wash jeans or shoulder pads? And you thought, oh, this is the height of what is cool. And then you look back and you go, I can't believe I thought that. I can't believe I dressed like that. Anyway, all right. What does Victoria say? Let's bring Victoria's comment in. She says, yes, for sure you must do that. And that is mostly why I read. But I also read to learn a skill. Absolutely. The only way to test that is to follow the directions and then weigh and consider it. Yes. Agreed. Because even when you are obtaining a skill, you need to weigh and consider so that it's like inculcated, so it really becomes something that you're not rote memorization. Because what is something where you just remember through rote, you recite it, maybe even in a language you don't completely understand, and that becomes your prevailing belief. That's not critical thinking. Shoulder pads are still okay. You, Victoria, new best friend. I love shoulder pads, and I am going to be embracing shoulder pads from this point forward. Shoulder pads are cool. Acid wash jeans, though, what do you think? Not so much. All right, next one. Sir Peter Bryan Medawar he was a British biologist and writer, and he did work on graft rejection. He's kind of the father of organ transplantation. So so that's his perspective. So it's good to kind of know where these quotes are coming from. So his is kind of the realm of biology. All right. So he says, never fall in love with your hypothesis. And remember, hypothesis, because you go, okay, yeah, we all know what hypotheses are, but just a little refresher, is a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. So like, I hypothesize that this, and this. Now, the idea isn't then to go prove your hypothesis, but it's to set you on a path of investigation. All right. No acid wash jeans. Didn't do that in the 90s. Okay. So we might be besties because I didn't really like acid wash jeans, but I did like shoulder pads. And okay, back to question authority. And I think this is great because Karen says question authority. Absolutely. And that's where you have to distinguish between who has authority and who is an authority. And all of this is right smack dab in the critical thinking sweet spot. And kill your darlings. Yes. What is that? That you need to, you kill your own thought babies before someone else does it for you. And we have Ravinda, true. So never fall in love with your hypotheses. And that also speaks right to the confirmation bias, true, because the whole idea of a hypothesis is to set you on your path toward finding the truth. So if you fall too far in love with it, you stake too much of your reputation on this hypothesis, and you're so entrenched that you can't change your mind publicly because you would lose face. That's a dangerous thing, because then you're tied to a belief or tied to an idea that just isn't true. All right, next one. Sir Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle. Who remembers? Who knows? He's the guy, he was actually the British writer and physician who wrote Sherlock Holmes. So now we're getting into the realm of literature, but he was also a physician. And we'll call it his critical thinking quote is, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data." To theorize, not hypothesize, but it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of twisting theories to suit facts. Sherlock Holmes. All right. And these are all kind of related smart things, but critical thinking is a very narrow realm of how to decide what is true and what to believe. All right. So Victoria says, absolutely never fall in love with your own opinion either. So true. Digging in too deep with your own thoughts can stop you from getting to the truth. Yes, absolutely. And being able to change your mind privately before you change it in public becomes even more difficult. And we have, let's see. Does critical thinking work on any decision? You don't need critical thinking for every decision, because some decisions are just kind of knee-jerk decisions. So some of the decisions that we make, we don't even realize as decisions. But for any decision where there is particularly consequential or irreversible consequences, yes, critical thinking is the tool for assessing what to do or what to believe. All right. Okay, so do we agree that it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data? Yeah. So hypothesize, don't fall in love with your hypothesis, and then go collect data, like it was pointed out, not just to confirm, but also to disconfirm. And that's how you move and progress, moving closer to the truth. All right. Next up is Francis Crick, Francis Harry Compton Crick, who was the British molecular biologist, neuroscientist, and biophysicist that worked with James Watson and Rosalind Franklin to decipher the double helix, the DNA strand, the double helix. All right. So let's just say, yes. Bad idea to consult and tell folks what they need without asking. Absolutely. Inquiry first. Inquiry first. Because, also she who, those who change their mind against their will are of the same opinion still. So get to questions first. Curiosity first. All right. Let's see. Oh, now I'm going to have to say this. Critical thinking works for decision-making based on data and analysis. Absolutely. And trying to prove yourself wrong. I agree with this, Victoria. Trying to prove yourself wrong is fun and productive. All right. Let's see. We got another question. What's your last question about truth and reality and the critical thinking approach about it, please? The last question. All right. I'll do that one more time. It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of twisting theories to suit facts. All right, that's it. Next one. So Francis Crick, here it is. A theory should not attempt to explain all facts because some of the facts are wrong. Okay, that's a little tricky one, but let's kind of revisit some of the obvious stuff. Like a fact, think of fact as information that exists regardless of whether it's perceived or not. So it's a thing known or proven to be true. But a fact statement can be true or false. Fire gives off heat. Now, when could a fact change? Well, imagine that it is a fact that bacteria or a virus behaves in a certain way. And that's just a fact. But then the circumstance changes. Maybe the coronavirus acts this way in a lab and acts this way in this population or in these bats, but then acts totally different in people of a different age or with a different, molecular kind of or bacterial biome. So facts can change when other facts change. And so we don't want to kind of hold too true to what Francis Crick is saying is like, if you don't base your theory to explain all the facts, because facts can change. Interesting, because you think of facts not being changeable, but they can be changeable. All right. Jennifer Felber, proving ourselves wrong should be a daily exercise. Absolutely. And when you build up the callus to feel comfortable with being wrong, it is so liberating but then we shouldn't also chastise people who elegantly change their mind. We shouldn't call them flip-floppers. We shouldn't make consistency with regard to theories and hypotheses a measure of someone's worth. That's kind of weird. I don't know why we do that. All right. Tube worms. Let's see. Tube worms live in an environment deadly to most life on Earth. Okay. That's a perfect example. So if you say this environment is deadly this environment is deadly, that's a fact. Until tube worms, to Karen's point, until you're looking at it from the perspective of a tube worm. This is why perspective intelligence is so important. We'll deal with that later, working on some really cool things around that. All right, next, let's see. Hamid, it seems sometimes critical thinking directs us to overthinking. Oh, I am so glad you said that. We did a Good Thinking Live on overthinking. Later this year, my course on LinkedIn Learning, Developing a Critical Thinking Mindset, got 2 new critical thinking courses coming out, will address overthinking. So you guys will get a heads up when I know that those are launching. We just recorded them right here remotely, right here in my home studio last week. So that's going to be fun. All right. So look for that. Ahmed, you asked a great question. You can also find on YouTube the Good Thinking episode on overthinking or how to avoid overthinking. All right. So how to change your mind, stuck on particular thoughts or beliefs. Guess we have another movie in the critical thinking course called How to Change Your Mind. Not to be switch with Michael Pollan's book on how to change your mind using psychedelic drugs. That's not what this is about. This is about how to change your mind in a step-by-step way to get used to doing that. So you'll look for that. It's a tricky quote. I think it's a tricky quote too because of the idea of how we engage with facts. Barath says it's a tricky quote. I kind of agree. That one was a little tricky to me too. All right, next quote. Ready? This is Richard Feynman. One of my favorite thinkers, kind of one of my historic boyfriends. He was the quantum physicist, Nobel Prize winner, American, died in 1988, wrote great books. If you can get to any of Richard Feynman's stuff, you're going to become a huge fan. F-E-Y-M-A-N, Feynman says the following quote. So let me know what you think. The thing that doesn't fit is the thing that is most interesting. The thing that doesn't fit is the thing that is most interesting. I love that quote. The thing that doesn't fit is the thing that's most interesting. Jennifer says, my boyfriend. Yes, Richard Feynman is kind of one of my historic boyfriends. But I think that's really important because what we tend to do when we have a theory for how something works is we tend to ignore the things that don't fit and because they don't make the story complete. I mean, think about some of the things, whether it's, social justice or whether it's science or whether it's literature or movies, anything, climate, anything that we kind of have a strong belief in, there's always going to be things that don't fit with our belief. That piece of puzzle that you have to kind of shove down a little harder. Whatever opinion you may have, and you shove that down a little harder because you want your story to be complete. But Richard Feynman says the thing that doesn't fit, that little piece of the puzzle that you have to shove down harder, is the exact piece of the puzzle that is the most interesting. Do you agree or disagree? Of course, I love Richard Feynman, so I agree. But do you agree or disagree with Richard Feynman? All right, let me know in the chat. All right, next one. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, English naturalist, geologist, biologist, wrote on the origin of species. So Charles Darwin. All right, so this is his. Ready? To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. So, kind of broken down, you have a choice between killing an error in our beliefs or establishing a new fact. And his quote suggests that it is more important to kill errors in our beliefs than to start establishing new frameworks or new facts or truths. What do you think? Agree or disagree? Agree or disagree? Anyway, all right. So we have, Stephen says agree. So that is the first. What do you think? And I don't know if you're saying agree to Richard Feynman or agree to Charles Darwin, but I actually agree with both of these quotes because before you can move on to establishing new ideas, you have to make sure that some of the ideas or some of the truths that you are building your foundation of new ideas upon are not shaky. And that's why I think that critical thinking is the foundation for the good thinking stool of critical thinking, creative thinking, and strategic thinking. Because before you get to the creative and strategic thinking, you have to make sure that you're basing this on a foundation of facts, strong facts without cracks in the foundation. All right. Barath says agree. Victoria says yes, because at least you're starting with a clean slate. No errors to taint your thoughts. Yes. I think between the dislike for acid wash jeans, shoulder pads, and this, I think we're probably going to need to meet each other outside of good thinking because big fan. All right, Victoria, totally agree. All right. Anyone else agree or disagree with Chuck Darwin? Next, Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, American author. All right. And this is, I love this quote. All right, ready? I think before we get to the quote, Jennifer says, I think both establishing an idea, then we can break it down. Nothing wrong about that. And that's true. Good point. I think that's a good point. Although you want to make sure that you are establishing your idea not on a shaky foundation of ideas that have kind of are not so reliably true. All right. Oh, Linda Elder and Richard Paul. Okay, some quotes from Linda Elder and Richard Paul. So they are the founders of the Critical Thinking Foundation here in the United States. They're not part of Prospero's Precepts, so we're just really focusing on Prospero's Precepts, not to suggest that they don't have brilliant quotes, but they're not part of Prospero's, they're not part of the 11 great thinkers that make up Prospero's Precepts. So let's see, although big fan. How many team members is suggested to participate in critical thinking process? How many meetings is needed? Okay, we will address that, and you actually can find some of those answers perhaps in my LinkedIn Learning course, Critical Thinking for Better Judgment Decision Making. But that's a good question, and we'll put that into a potential good thinking episode for another time, because now we're dealing with Prospero's precepts. So the ninth one from Mark Twain is, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So it's not the things that you don't know and you haven't read about. It's the things that you think you know, but you're wrong about. I have to say straight up, that's one of my favorite quotes. And I have to give a rubber chicken for Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, because I love the way he just simplifies it and just makes it in very, comfortable language. All right. Next one, we got two more and we're done. Thomas Jefferson, American diplomat, founding father, president of the United States, principal author of the Declaration of Independence. You know the guy. He says, ignorance is preferable to error. Yeah. And he is less remote from the truth who believes nothing than he who believes what is wrong. So it's better, I kind of think about this as like, it's almost better to just say, to not form a belief than to form a belief that's wrong. What do you think? What do you think? Jennifer says, we're talking about, I think she's saying, yeah, I love the just ain't so. Love the Twain quote. Love that Twain quote. Let's see what Karen says, causes serious anxiety when you find out you're wrong. Yeah. That's why we address that in the upcoming critical thinking course later this year, and particularly the one, how to change your mind. The key is to do it privately before you do it in public and practice. Anyway, and also how to help other people change their mind, which is not to convince them, see, you've been so wrong all along. All right. So better to understand than to stand for nothing. All right. Okay. So Karen, maybe that's in contrast to Thomas Jefferson. I don't know. He says, ignorance is preferable to error. Do you think ignorance is preferable to error? Is it better to stand for something than nothing when what you stand for is not correct? That's the question. So maybe Karen doesn't agree with Thomas Jefferson, or maybe, what do you think? Do you agree, disagree? I got to go on a limb and say I agree with Thomas Jefferson. There's exceptions, but I think that it is preferable to withhold a strong opinion that about something you know very little about, or you don't know enough about. I think to hold a strong opinion has a very high barrier. I think you should not have, my thought is like, I try to avoid having a strong opinion unless I really have the time and take the time to make myself deeply knowledgeable enough to have it. I could have a light opinion about a lot of things, but then I got to be willing to change my mind. Okay. I agree. Victoria says, right on, stand for nothing before standing for something that is wrong in general. And that is why, I might have a little bit of a problem with some of the pithy things like silence is violence. Sometimes it's better to take the time to understand, deeply understand, before going out and espousing an opinion. All right. LinkedIn user, which we will see in the chat, but I don't see, says, seems like we would be frozen in fear and never learn from failure. Well, maybe. But this has to do with taking the time to devote to learning enough to have a strong opinion, or just saying, okay, I have a well-informed opinion about this. I spent this and this time, or I've just adopted someone else's opinion that I think is right. Those are very different. And critical thinking requires making that distinction. That's why critical thinking isn't the most comfortable thing in the world. But we wanted to save the trees, so we went to plastic bags, and look where we are. Oh my gosh, I knocked out my earphones. That is so true. Now I don't, and some of these things, the unintended consequences, huge. All right, last one. I'm going to wrap it up. We're running a little late. We're going to do the last one, which is Arthur Schopenhauer. He was a German philosopher, and he was one of the first thinkers in Western philosophy to actually share the tenets of Indian philosophy. So that was kind of an interesting thing where he was like, look what we learned from these ancient ascetics, these ancient philosophers in India, and brought that to the Western world. So he says, and Jennifer says, elevate curiosity over fear. Victoria says, don't be frozen. Take the time to look into it. I don't have an opinion on everything, and I shouldn't. Agreed. You can have a light opinion on a lot of things. But if you're going to have a strong opinion, there's a requirement. There needs to be a requirement. You need to earn it. You need to earn your right to have a strong opinion from a critical thinking standpoint, not from a general, you can do whatever you want, but for a critical thinking standpoint, you have to earn the right to have a strong opinion. All right, ready for the last one? Arthur's quote. Ready? Schopenhauer's quote. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. What do you think? I'm going to read it one more time. Let me know what you think. This is the last one, the 11th of Prospero's Precepts. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. Okay, so what do you think? Well, first of all, I'm going to say I don't agree because he says all truths. If he said most truths, I would probably have to agree. The other thing I would say is that sometimes we see the process of something being ridiculed and then violently opposed, and we think, okay, these are the 2 stages. We know now that everyone's going to accept that. Or we take some ridiculous idea that people oppose or ridicule, and we think that because they ridicule that idea, the idea must be good if only we wait long enough. There's a lot of ideas that are ridiculed and violently opposed that are really bad ideas. And there are ideas like Galileo, where there are ideas where they are ridiculed and violently opposed and then turn out to be right, self-evident. So it's easy to think that if these things happen, it means it's the right idea, but it's not necessarily the case. All right, there is change resistance. And also, Jennifer says, as which Karen points out, and Jennifer says, be careful if you're always and never. So all truths pass through these 3 stages? Not sure that all truths do. Maybe, I don't know. Passing through these 3 stages also doesn't make something true. So if you have some conspiracy theory or some idea, and people ridicule your idea, is that a sign that your idea is right? No, your idea might be wrong, but it could be that your idea is right, regardless of whether it's ridiculed or people violently oppose. The key is, and here's the question, and I'll leave you with this. The LinkedIn, I wish I knew who this was. LinkedIn Learner could depend on the knowledge and sophistication of the audience. Absolutely. Perfect. Brilliant. Yes. Who has authority and who isn't authority. And Karen says, even if accepted to be true, the truth could be the wrong idea. Exactly. Eventually, time is the thumb on the scale. Here's my last thing that I love these Prospero's Precepts. Do you love these Prospero's Precepts? What are your thoughts? I love taking quotes and then teasing them apart because because someone said it a long time ago and it is right in some context doesn't make it right. But I think these are fun tools that you can use to help you with doubt. Even some of the things that are prevailing beliefs that everyone believes. And you can use these to kind of tease it apart. But the main thing is, if you don't have an idea, something that you feel uncomfortable sharing that is against a prevailing belief, then you probably are not grappling with any original ideas. I'll leave you with that. All right. Yeah, I love Prosperos. I love these challenges. Jennifer says, I love Prospero's Precepts. I do too. These challenges. We'll have more challenges. We're right here on Monday mornings, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, LinkedIn Learning, and on YouTube Live on Becky Saltzman. You can subscribe, hit that bell so you get the notifications. And thank you for being a good thinker, because really this is our show, like our collective show, people who want to spend a little bit of time each week on improving how to think. So I'm so grateful to all of you good thinkers for being here and delving into Prospero's Precepts. We're always going to have these kind of crazy things to kind of tease apart. Then we go about our week, the rest of our week, like doing what we're supposed to do. All right. Thanks, rebellious thinkers, good thinkers. Really appreciate your being here. See you next week.